How many of you have before played this game in hardest mode? How about hard hits the entire adventure? How about leveling up only HP? How about... Get over there! Maybe I should have farmed items before fighting Spooter. Or maybe I should just get good and stop missing super blocks on the first attack. Either way, my first attempt on this boss fight did not go well. As with V struggling to survive, I found myself overwhelmed at the end of the fight. And this will be the first of many deaths I predict. The second encounter with Spooter though saw me miss no significant blocks, and the fact that I have my spite added already also means that I'm able to just focus on attacking more. Given this saw, we were able to end the fight with everyone standing victorious and tall, and just about everyone was pulling their weight in this fight too. Though if I'm already having deaths on the first boss where hard hits is not even available yet, this does not bode well for us at all. I'm twitching already. Earlier in this video, I already gave you a taste of what's to come. But despite being this early in the game, note that big numbers are going to start appearing very quickly already. And be warned, we're going to need some strategy, and fast. I mean, at least it's not all bad, right? After all, the trade-off for having hard hits the entire adventure is that every enemy you fight has doubled the berry reward. I hate false advertising. At least the fight with Acolyte Arya was relatively painless. Acolyte Arya. Why don't I just call her Arya? It's like human Kimberly and Cat Scratch. Ugh, I'm weird. Despite the threat of high damage, I wasn't really worried about that here. Leaves Icefall is a fantastic tool to freeze Arya solid, including the Venus Red if it spawns, since it's basically guaranteed to freeze on the first use. And with how dangerous multi-hits are in this challenge, you do want to get hit by 3 spores consecutively in a single turn. And if Arya increases her defense, which she likely will do sometimes, you wouldn't use V anyway, you'd use Kabu instead. Compared to both past and future bosses, this fight really is not that bad, and we managed to win in our first attempt. With her out of the way, we can challenge the Devourer, but this is not going to happen. Not yet, and not for a while. This early in the game in hardest mode, your only real chance of winning this fight is using Heavy Sleeper. And since neither V or Leaf can heal enough with that metal, and Kabu can't even reach Devourer, our damage is practically non-existent after turn 3. Not to mention the plethora of other potential issues that we'll see later on in this video. So venturing to Golden Hills, we stood up to fight Zasp and Moth. And it's here I realized just exactly what I really am in for. You can generally go guns blazing with fights like say against Arya and Spooter. But the first encounter with Zasp and Moth really shows that won't always work. The damage from both of these two, even as individuals, is honestly really scary. And it demanded that we bring plenty of items to actually be able to survive and stand a chance here. We also had to actually get strategic with our metals, not to mention getting really liberal with our berries, getting lots of drowsy cakes, and taking full advantage of Heavy Sleeper and sleep resistance. Our trump card, however, lied in abominations. When you have only 5 MP, you have to really think about how you use your metals. And in hindsight, I don't think that we get much value out of using Devourer's last attack anyway, because that costs 4 MP already. We also have to put up with Zasp taunting us every now and then, but I had a strategy in mind that would make this fight go by a lot faster. And by I had a strategy in mind, I meant that me and my stream chat were brainstorming ideas for how to win this fight. And what you're seeing on the screen right now is ultimately what we came up with. It's sad our HP does not last long at all, but the fact that we have so much HP, and the fact that abominations don't have their damage scale of hard hits, it does us an insane amount of favor. It makes me shiver in horror to know we have to fight them again in Chapter 6, but by then, we should have plenty more options, so let's see what happens later. I'm especially curious to figure out how we handle using Livecast. The next boss fight we encounter is the last boss fight we have before hardest mode comes into even more effect. Let's talk about Venus Guardian. This was a fight where once again, I turned my brain off. I was still super blocking a bunch, but that wasn't even enough because at one point, Kabu got targeted by some heart seeds and was taken from basically max HP to 0. That's another thing. Attacks that hit multiple times are brutal in this challenge. And the funny thing is that Light was talking as if I was going to win this no matter what, and then that happened. RNG is a real piece of work, don't you know it? I reasoned here that the best course of action in this boss fight was to have Leaf in the back using Break, relaying V's turn to Kabu, and having him keep using his attack on Venus Guardian. Kabu's basic attack does additional damage to enemies with defense. So instead of doing 3 and 2, he does 4 and 3. Not quite as much as 5 and 4 of using Heavy Strike, but it's much cheaper in your TP. And remember, we only have 10 max. And sometimes I want to spend my TP on using Secret Stash instead, which often is necessary because A, I don't have a lot of items on me because I'm kind of lazy, and B, the Venus Guardian with one attack can actually take out half of either V or Kabu's HP depending on whether or not you super block or not. I didn't go into this completely devoid of items though, but it was much harder to heal with Leaf. My metas were mostly the same if there's Osprey Mothova, but I had to drop Leaf's sleep resistance to make room. Another really tricky part of this fight is knowing the HP trigger that actually has the Venus Bud spawn. I don't want to do too much damage where I am unable to deal with the Venus Bud that spawns and heals the Venus Guardian at the same time. But I also don't want to do too little damage and just take 3 hits for no good reason. Which I did end up doing quite a bit because I didn't want to take a chance and accidentally cause a repeat of what happened in my first attempt here. Yeah, this fight took 2 attempts to win. On the bright side, when I did win, only Kabu fainted. It just came down to using a few frigid coffins and bingo. The second artifact is ours. I'd love to say that things were starting to look up, but I knew better than that. After Venus Guardian, every enemy in the game has +1 attack, on top of the +1 attack they already gained from hardest mode being active period. And this forced me to overcompensate. Before beginning chapter 3, I wanted to try and get some more money. When you take as much damage as I do, there's really only one worthwhile healing item, and it's Queen's Dinners. But it'd be a ways away before I get the chance to try and challenge the Ceiling King, so I grinded a bunch of berries, and then I could go to Metal Island to get myself some Tangy Berries from there. Though that's only when we reach Defiant Root, and we still have Mystery of Scarlet first. To my credit, I did try to think ahead, but I forgot to cook my honey drop into a glazed honey, and as it turns out, I did more than 1 glazed honey anyway. But you can see right here just how much damage I'm taking this entire fight. Only made worse by the fact that Mr. Scarlet heals the HP he steals from me. My second attempt though, despite the fact that my freeze luck was pretty bad, it led to this fight going really well and ending in my favor. At least, assuming it was only because of my good freeze luck here. No, Mr. Scarlet did some pretty big blunders in this fight as well on his end. Like increasing his attack power, which led to me then freezing him solid for a couple of turns, and then using a crescent beam against me when I could have very well been like hit by a blast attack instead. Or really any healing attack he could have used against me. He didn't do it. So at this point he has 16 HP left. I use an Abomination after relaying all my turns to Leaf, since he's the only bug I have that can survive an Abomination blast. And then 2 Frigid Coffins later, after my TP is restored by the Abomination, I win the fight. And even though I did have a death to Mr. Scarlet, I don't think this would be very far-fetched to call it a first attempt victory. Look, even the game considers it a first attempt victory, and I'm okay with that. Also, yeah, Abominations in this challenge will be very helpful. These things don't do any more damage to us thanks to hard hits or hardest mode, and as you can see here during the Bandit and Wasp ambush fight, it makes quick work of some required enemies as well. Since we have so little TP, I think these are almost essential sometimes in battle. At least now we have access to Queen's Dinners, and that means we'll have much more survivability on our side as well. Not only is this style of play ideal for the rest of the game, but it's also required for Chapter 3's Honey Factory. And trust me, you know what I mean. By the way, is it me, or when I see all this honey, I think about the natural honey syrup on TTYD. Man, we already have shell ointment. Imagine what we could do if we had a bit of gold too. We could have this massive, sticky, and yummy explosion blowing up the entire hive. Maybe then we can actually escape the Honey Factory early. Anyway, a Honey Nation. I know I said that no one would be easy in this challenge, but Arya and a Honey Nation are probably the easiest bosses so far. In the case of a Honey Nation, most of what it would do is just bit Obama Honey, which I would immediately kill, while Leaf continued to heal himself. Beyond that, it used a charge attack that did a whopping 9 damage to everybody after a super block. If that's not fair and balanced, I don't know what is. But now we reached B33. This boss is already absurd on hardest mode. With hardest and hard hits active, this boss is just straight up unfair. I don't even have to explain. Look at how much damage Kabu takes from super blocking a missile when the B33 has permanent attack up, and then see how much damage Leaf takes from not blocking at all. And only then you realize just how hopeless this challenge really is. And it's here I decided, you know what, I'm not using Taunt, I'm not using Bubble Shield, I will use Shock Trooper in this fight. Yeah, I didn't mention this at first in this challenge because I figured it wasn't really important, but I wanted to try doing this challenge without the combination of using Bubble Shield Light and Taunt, or Bubble Shield Light and Shock Trooper either. I just thought the strategy was a little too overpowered in a challenge run where attacks do as much damage as possible. And if you wonder what I mean, just check out my TB only hardest challenge or my Tough Bugs challenge in the same game. Invincibility builds are ridiculously strong in this game. It's a similar reason as to why nowadays I ban Super Guarding in Paper Mario with the 1,000-year door. With Shock Trooper, this fight wasn't that bad, though I had to rely on the Bee-Boo being summoned by B33 to survive this fight. And even still, I had to use a lot of Queen's Dinners and even some Shock Berries to survive. This marks the end of Chapter 3 in our run, but as we begin Chapter 4, and I fight Astophiles, whose stab attack does a whopping 3 damage per strike. And you know that he'll get hostile status, and he'll end up being able to do 12 damage in a single turn if he really wanted to, without having to swing a sword first. I started to fear for the worst. Now, I don't know what to do, because as is, I cannot even come close to beating Astophiles. And what really sucks about this boss is that items are off limits. I then went to try fighting Mother Chomper, but on my way to her den, I got first struck by some chompers, and my entire party almost got wiped out by 3 chompers in Chapter freaking 4. Not even chomper brutes, just regular chompers. As for Mother Chomper though, her spores, while completely unbuffed mind you, do 4 damage per hit. And that's off of a super block. Imagine what her bite is capable of. Or even the hard C's if she wanted to spit those out instead. And I have no idea if this run is possible without using Princess. If you couldn't tell, Astophiles ain't happening. Heck, forget Astophiles. I tried to fight Sen and PC because one of my viewers while I was streaming this game wanted to see me try fighting Harmona using those 2 as spy cards. And even these 2 kicked my behind. By the way, a PSA, never use Sen and PC in spy cards. They're garbage. As much as I, well, used to hate Mothova, and I don't care for Zasp, at least in Spike Cards they're pretty dang good. And while fighting the Spike Cards Master, I was also taking care of V's request as well to reconcile with Joan. Because by now in the stream, I completely was checked out, and I felt like no bosses were possible. I didn't even attempt the Brute Mother because that fight's even more RNG with how midgets are summoned. I had 2 options by this point. Option A, grind, get a bunch of exploration points, and a bushload of berries to get myself Queen's Dinners and Miracle Shakes as I see fit. And then just pick a god and pray to that god that is set up to beat Mother Chomper. Or option B, Shock Trooper and Taunt, and in effect, rendering the entire point of hardest and hard hits completely moot. A real case of pick your poison. But you know, I feel like there just had to be a better way. So what did I do? I went at Astophiles and I grinded this fight out. I tried to learn the absolute best way to go about this fight. I tried strategies involving poison needles, meditation, spiky bot, and super block plus. I even tried tardigrade shield. But the strategy I found that had the most likely chance of success involved using a metal that I almost never use outside of like one challenge run. Remember my Berserker Edition challenge of Blood Fables? Well, forget about Berserker. Remember, we cannot rank up MP, so we have only 5 MP, and that means that we can't equip Berserker since it costs 6 MP to equip. But what we can equip is Antlion Jaws. Yeah, this time around, I decided to take a page out of my Just the Basics challenge. And what I did was I relayed V and Leaf's turns to Kabu, and just had him spam his basic attack. And as I'm doing this, I have to hope that Kabu survives at least the first 3 turns. Meaning at least one time before turn 4, Astophiles has to target at least either V or Leaf. All the while, keep this in mind, I cannot afford to miss a single super block on anyone. Missing even one super block means that I'm taking all that more damage because of hard hits. Then on turn 4, when Astophiles has his hostile status already activated, Kabu still attacks twice, but then Leaf has to use Frigid Coffin, and it has to freeze. If this move freezes, we basically already won. Because on Astophiles' next attack, which will happen after we break him out of his icy prison, he will attack only one time, basically meaning the damage he can do to Kabu is significantly less. We then just have to have Kabu keep attacking, but then on this turn, have Leaf Bubble Shield Light Kabu to protect him. And with just one more turn relay on Kabu, he can do his basic attack 2 more times on Astophiles and knock him out. Honestly, I'm kind of ashamed about the fact that it took me so long to figure this out, since the strategy calls for literally only Antlion Jaws. Now, I could complain about the fact that even after figuring this out, I had 6 more deaths to Astophiles, because either A, Kabu was focused too much by Astophiles and he was knocked out, B, Frigid Coffin would not freeze him solid, or C, he would focus too little on Kabu, or just too much on any other bug, and they would get knocked out instead, meaning I just do barely too little damage to KO him. But at this point, it's whatever. I managed to win this fight, and that's all that matters. And good thing too, because without a certain other metal, we are not beating Mother Chopper anytime soon. It's a good thing then that metal is available very soon because it's the horrible reward for Dune Scorpion. And not only is this boss significantly easier to take down than Astophiles, but we also have unrestricted item use as well. Expect to see a lot of Queen's Dinners from now on. If that's a turn off for you, I'm sorry. I'm only doing what I have to do to survive, which includes but is not limited to some Breaking Bad chemical combinations. That's fancy talk for saying I made some abominations for Mother Chopper. My kit for this boss was having Kabu equipping both Tardigrade Shield and Super Block Plus. Yes, I'm using Tardigrade Shield. The way I saw it, using Taunt and Bubble Shield Light is just cheap and honestly not even very fair to watch. At least with Tardigrade Shield, not only is there a chance I can actually fail guarding, but it still takes some input from me, the player. And compared to earlier in this video, you can tell that the reduced damage is actually very important for Kabu's survival. Half of this fight was having Kabu use his taunt skill, then Sturdy, and then either having V use Hard Charge, and trying to find those moments to sneak in my usage of either Needle Toss or Hurricane Toss. In a pinch, I can use a Queen's Dinner with either Leaf or V to max out everyone's TP, as well as most of our HP. Around halfway through the fight though, or in this case, when Mother Chopper has at 60% HP left, that's when she's attacking twice per turn, and that's where the damage Kabu takes can get really heavy really fast. Luckily for me though, a Chopper actually spawned behind Mother Chopper, so I was able to take out the first two in front of her. And that reduces the turns where Mother Chopper gets buffed by that baby Chopper by half. There were times I did have to use Bubble Shield Light and just hope that V got targeted instead, because A, I had to make my damage stick, B, Kabu can only take so much damage before going down, and thanks to Mother Chopper getting her attack stat buff sometimes, Kabu's theoretical limit just goes down lower and lower as the fight progresses. And C, I only have so many Queen's Dinners to use. Keep in mind that when Mother Chopper got below 20 HP, we had only one Queen's Dinner left. So to close the fight out, I had to use 2 Abominations in one turn, alongside a Queen's Dinner in between the 2 uses to make sure one of my bugs at least is still surviving the fight at the end of it all. That, my friends, was terrifying. And I think it will demonstrate just what kind of strategy we'll need later in this challenge as well, just knowing exactly what we're up against and what we have to do to survive. And now that I have finally finished that extremely clunky exposition dump, say hello to Princess. While you say hello, I'm gonna ask you to click subscribe. Now, before going to Chapter 4's boss, the Watcher, I did find some magic ice, which can only really mean I can get Frost Relay. At least, I wanted to get Frost Relay, but then I remembered. I had to fight Broodmother first. Yeah, her. The boss I said I didn't want to fight earlier in the video because I figured it should be too much for me to win. And fighting her taught me I should really just shut my dang mouth. Not sure because I overrated this boss, or just because of how good Hard Charge is as a metal. Ugh, how can I be so naive? But the most bad that Broodmother managed to do was just, like, summon a single mid to help alongside her. And then most of the fight was just her trying to brawl against 3 other bugs, which really did not work very well for her. Especially when I have Leaf and I can use Frigid Coffin. Princess is also trying to find any chances possible to get any extra damage for us. It took only one attempt, and we did it. So Frost Relay is now online, and it now means we can fight the Watcher with a move as well. Though thanks to Hardest, this means that the Watcher has the one defense point from the very beginning of the fight. Now that I know Frost Relay as well as I do, this severely nerfs how much damage the move can really get. And it almost necessitates I either use Deep Taunt alongside it, or items like Squash Tarts or Spicy Candy. The Watcher made this a pretty easy decision though, because he often used defense up statuses on himself. So often my best option was to have Kabu in front and use Understrike. Though Frost Relay, in addition to just using Leaf's Frigid Coffin skill, worked pretty dang well here. The one to ultimately get the KO, however, was Princess. So the Chapter 4 boss has been defeated, but I'm not quite done with Chapter 4 yet. There are other fights I want to do as well, like Cowley and Kabu. I had no Numbnail darts, so most of this fight was just trying to deal with Kabu constantly taunting me, and otherwise just healing when I'm in danger. Nothing particularly special, that's for sure. Luckily though, the Ceiling King is very different in that regard. It took a few attempts to really figure out my strategy for this fight, but when I did figure it out, we were cloning on this boss. Though I just have to take the time to say this right now, I hate how Tardigrade's shield, for some stupid reason, despite the fact that its description says that it blocks any negative status elements, does not block attack being dropped from the hard seeds. Just hammering in that final nail for this stupid skill. But the extent of this fight was just having Leaf use Hard Charge and then Ice Rain when his exhaustion was worn off. Ultimately pretty simple, and the fact that I have so many Queen Zitters made it really easy to pull up consistently. It's going to be great having Seedling Haven unlocked because I desperately want to level up, and there aren't a lot of good areas to do it in either. At least Golden Seedlings, as strong as they are, can be pretty easily worked around. Not like, say, Chomper Bruce or upper stigma of lab enemies, like, say, Zombeetles, which are extremely deadly, and there really isn't much recourse for them either, aside from using, like, Leaf's Fission Coffin skill. Can you imagine if one of these things were summoned in the fight with Zomoth? It would be a freaking nightmare. But don't tell Zomoth that, it would just make this fight so much harder. I'm actually rather surprised at how well this fight went for us. Finding my footing for damage was actually the hardest part. You'd think it'd be smart to give Leaf Hard Charge because Ice Rain does so much damage here, but thanks to Harvest giving Zomoth 2 defense, it unfortunately nerfs Ice Rain quite a bit. So it's instead better to use a move like, say, V's Needle Toss here. Though thinking about it, this is where Kabu would shine. It doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things because V's Needle Toss does ignore all defense, and Zomoth not once ever summoned any enemies this entire fight, which is extremely lucky for us. But this lax attitude I was displaying will bite me in the butt soon after. I never did think much of sending PC, but this fight made sure I knew their names. The major problem here is PC, who thanks to Hardest mode has a whopping 3 defense. The only characters I have in my party that can hurt PC without using TP are Kabu and Princess. And Kabu has to be in the front. Meanwhile, Kabu can barely put a dent in those rock walls that PC can summon. And both Set and PC are using their turns to keep healing each other. It's clear for this fight, we can't use V's missiles. We need Kabu to be used as a mortar here. Also, fun fact, we have only one Queen Zitter left, so we have to use it wisely or else we just won't have any TP left to really use here. And yet I had plenty of Miracle Shakes. So for a while, I was just repeatedly trying to revive Kabu so he could use this other strike against PC to finish the fight, and immediately he gets knocked right back out. I was actually afraid, thinking that, oh my god, this is my life, trying to not get knocked out by PC and just not get hit for one whole freaking turn. Just to be reminded, oh, I have TP core equipped. Okay, so that was that then. And now I'm ready to say goodbye to Chapter 4. And just in case you're wondering about the Wasp King, take a good long look at how much damage he's doing to us. This is going to hurt. I did a lot of grinding off stream, which also means getting a lot of extra rank ups. Yeah, we're set, let's freaking go. Chapter 5 has precious few fights that are really important to look at. After smashing the leaf bugs that tried to ambush us, we're up against the beast. Expect to see lots of frozen drills from now on in this challenge. On top of having lots of HP, bosses also have some very impressive defense stats to them. But frozen drill, especially when buffed by hard charge, is actually still very potent. And we're still packing a lot of heat thanks to our Queen's Dinners. I still chose to exercise caution during the 10 HP phase though, because the beast can heal a lot of HP if I don't guard properly. With the TP to use Understrike a few times though, I'm able to finish this fight before it gets too bad for me. So that fight all around wasn't horrible. Though General Ultimax, I have to admit, was a fight that actually legitimately intimidated me. I'm not gonna BS you. We got extremely lucky in this fight. If not for some lucky freezes from Frozen Drill, Frigid Coffin, and even Frost Bowling, I don't believe we'd have come out of this fight alive. Just the Wasp Bomber alone was devastated with its damage output thanks to Spicy Bombs. I don't want to think about what the Driller could do, especially with Ultimax buffing its attack stat. With our good luck though, we did end up doing pretty well and won this fight on our first attempt. Though we also went a bit too early. I was not expecting Princess to KO him when he did. Not that big a deal, I can get the Spite at it later at the BOSS, but this was rather inconvenient for me. But with that admittedly really scary encounter with Fuff, we are now in Chapter 6. And this chapter is the big one. There's a lot of fights I want to look at, not only with mini-bosses, but also the bounties. Sounds scary, but not as scary as having access to live casts now. My TP is pitifully low, but my HP is massive. Now it's time to weaponize that very same HP and get some real damage in. This is a very double-edged metal, because we're using our own HP, which goes extremely quickly as is, to do more damage, but it will make a lot of fights actually possible, so why the heck not? I'm thinking the combination of live cast, hard charge, and status really will be absolutely instrumental for the rest of this challenge. And thanks to Eliza II II's Royal Decree, our Frozen Drills are as strong as ever. It's also really funny seeing V as my hard charge passer. But when everyone has massive HP, why the heck not? Especially when I'm using Leaf and combo her attack, and hard charge still induces exhaustion. Oh yeah, by the way, keep tracking Princess's KO counter. It's gonna be going up a lot from now on. How many heads will she claim in the Coliseum though? Well, that's anybody's guess. Throughout this arena, most of my actions consisted of using Kabu to attack, whether it be Understrike or Frozen Drill, a fact true for the first second landers, Cross and Poi, and then Zasp and Mothova. Never mind the fact that I utterly choked on my first attempt on these two because I guess I was just really hungry and I couldn't really think straight, which led to an extremely premature loss in this fight, but you know, no Johns. You know, that was just a warm-up. Never mind the fact that I completely beefed that action command for Frozen Drill. Because when it comes down to it, how many of y'all have the guts to super block Mothova's kick? After she goes down, Zasp is still pretty threatening though. Mostly because it was around here I decided no more Queen's Dinners were necessary to use. And I was right, but then Kabu got knocked out as well. And just look at this. Because Zasp has 2 defense, I can't do damage while either using TP or having my attacker be in the front. We still had it in us to come out on top, and once again, Princess gets rid of the KO. Our wallets are filled up, we've got goodies in our satchel, and now it's time to do some bounty hunting like we're Samus Aran. My first target was Tidal Worm. Taking the tail down does reduce Tidal Worm's defense to 0, even despite the extra defense from hardest mode. This means that Frost Relay is once again useful. Couple that knowledge with some timely uses of my dash through skill, some squash tarts, and we are just chilling. Those little hits add up to a lot of damage over time. Sometimes as much as 31 damage. That wasn't to say this fight was easy, but we had plenty of Queen's Dinners. So the summons of Water Striders and Diving Spiders weren't the worst things in the world. 1 down, 3 to go. Or 2 down if you count Seedling King. Second up is the False Monarch. I'll be the first to admit that I had no idea what I was trying to do in this fight. I wanted to do something using V's Hurricane Toss, but then I realized that it was just not very effective. Some Frost Relays were used, but only when I had access to my Swash Tarts, because without extra attack power, I would not be doing a lot of damage to False Monarch at all. When I ran out of ways to inflict power on myself, that was just off the table. So my strategy just evolved to using Frozen Drill a lot instead. A lot of Queen's Dinners were used up, and a lot of HP was restored from the Moth Flies as well. More than all of that though, a lot of time was used. This fight lasted a whole 10 minutes. Normally, False Monarch is considered a glass cannon. A ridiculous amount of HP and ridiculously high attack power, especially with throwing out multiple Moth Flies at once. But it also normally has 0 defense. Even having only 1 defense point, that means I can't use Frost Relay as reliably. So this fight feels like it takes a lot longer to finish. I think more than anything else though, I should be really thankful that Kabu never got knocked out. He almost did once, but he had 1 HP left over. And the fight ended with yet another KO from Princess. These past 2 bounty fights were actually relatively easy. The latter 2 though, were absolutely horrifying. They range from being nightmarishly hard to about as cooperative as a Dell laptop. Oh yeah, and Riz I guess. I use Frostbite here, so I don't really care to talk about him. Now compared to the following bounty, Peacock Spider took only about 2 attempts. Technically 3, but my first attempt saw me forget to get the right metal configuration. Though attempt number 2 taught me that my intended configuration didn't quite work out. The Summon Diving Spider can do ridiculous damage to your entire party. Largely because the Peacock Spider can buff it. Empower and Charge Up are both really scary statuses to see, but the real danger here is Hustle, because the already devastating damage output the Diving Spider has is effectively doubled that way. It also doubles the chances of the Bubble Shield being used on itself, which is of course always a bad thing to see. Winning this fight meant I would have to rely on only 1 attacker, not 2, so I resorted then to focusing only on using V to attack. The game plan here is that I can either use Kabu or Leaf to revive, using Miracle Shakes or Pep Talk. If I can find the chance to do it, I want to use Leaf's turn to use Hard Charge, and then pass it to V, who can then use her HP to use Hurricane Toss, doing a lot of damage. And if ever anyone really gets hurt, well, I have Queen's Dinners for that purpose. I think I went to this fight with like 7 Queen's Dinners and 2 Miracle Shakes, and by the end of the fight, I had nothing left. But winning this fight really demanded that Peacock Spider was cooperative. Like, on my successful attempt, I don't think she once tried to use Hustle status on the Diving Spider she summoned. This is actually where Princess deserves a lot of credit. Because of the chip damage she was getting with the Diving Spider, the Peacock Spider kept healing it. This bought a lot of time for Team Saintmouth to actually get set up and do some damage. At some point, I got it in my head that I wanted to try and take out the diving spider as soon as possible as well, so I try to resort to frost bowling, and as I'm doing the command, I actually only get the first 3 inputs off. What am I doing? This only worked out because we managed to freeze the diving spider, so Princess was able to finish it off. But not too much long afterwards, well, another diving spider was summoned, and once again it has permanent empower status inflicted on it. Except it also has Fortify, so because of my blunder, I made Princess's job harder. Except now, I'm also at a turn deficit, so now I'm desperate. I'm using my Miracle Shakes. Because V is often very prone to getting knocked out, and it allows me to revive her, but it also gives me just enough HP to use Hurricane Toss, which Kabu's Pep Talk can't do. And I'm just desperately trying to hammer away at the Peacock Spider using Hard Charge and relaying it to V, and then the Diving Spider actually does not KO V despite having only 2 HP in the front, but the Peacock Spider KOs Kabu, when I already used up my last Miracle Shake. So this looks really freaking bad, because the Peacock Spider still has 2 HP left. And despite not having any more Miracle Shakes, we still had a miracle happen. Despite the Diving Spider still being plenty healthy, the Peacock Spider decided to heal it. So I'm sitting on a V with only 1 HP left, but just enough attack power to KO the Peacock Spider. But I knew then that the Diving Spider would have completely destroyed me afterwards. So what I wanted to do then was use Ice Rain to hopefully try and KO the Peacock Spider, as well as get some extra chip damage on the Diving Spider. But not one of my Ice Rain hits were able to hit both at once. Though funny enough, I did end the turn with the Diving Spider frozen. The next turn, I relay all my turns to V because she has my Super Pepper. I have her attack twice, but of course, I can't do that much damage after the freeze is worn off because, well, the defense is increased on this freaking thing. Princess makes her little contribution, and it does not bubble shield itself. We ended the fight barely still alive, with Princess getting exact damage on the final enemy. That was close. I was so checked out after this boss fight. I legitimately thought we were going to lose again. And if I did lose, well, I'd have to go back to the drawing board, but I guess I'd still had more space for more Queen's Dinners. It's just that grinding them all up takes a lot of freaking time, and I want to use as few as I possibly need to. I'm about to go ahead and claim my bounty rewards, and then I realized something. I haven't beaten Devourer yet. I have all the bounty drops except for the Crystal Fang. So I hike to Golden Settlement and I fight my final bounty boss. I must preface this by saying that Devourer is not the hardest bounty fight you can do in this challenge. Not even close. At the worst, it's the most obnoxious. That's really all I can really say about it. Hard Charge passing for Frozen Drill to do a lot of damage is in general just a very effective strategy here, and if not that, Leaf's Ice Rain is also fantastic. Still, this fight is probably the fight that took the most attempts in this entire challenge so far. Not because of any significant difficulty, it's because Devourer has this rather unique characteristic of being able to steal one of your bugs, and it never fails. Turn 2, he captures one of my bugs, and is from there just a death. Even if I get the bug back, I have nary any chance of doing enough damage to either rescue that bug or surviving for long enough because of just how much damage he's able to do to me. Did I mention that this entire challenge has hard hits equipped? I'm pretty sure I have, but it never hurts to remind people. By the way, I was going insane. It took 7 attempts total, and Devourer not using the head slam on turn freaking 2, that I was able to win the fight. Where I was able to successfully pass 2 hard charges, 1 to Leaf and 1 to Kabu, and then follow up an Ice Rain with Leaf using Frozen Drill, where Leaf was then KO'd, but by now, Devourer finally has low enough HP where I can use Fly Drop and just say sayonara. And finally, all the bounty bosses have been defeated. The next couple of fights aren't nearly as scary though. Saying the Ultimax tank hits hard would be a disservice to every boss previous that hits hard already. As long as Kabu stays alive, and we have V alive to keep using Turn Relay and Hard Charge, we're mostly fine, as Leaf using Frozen Drill is devastating. Even if either V or Leaf got knocked out, we have Pep Talk, and plenty of Queen's Dinners to keep us going. And yet it wasn't Frozen Drill, it was Fly Drop that I used to KO the tank, with Ultimax himself succumbing to a Frigid Coffin, a Hard Charge boosted Hurricane Toss, and then Princess herself. That's it for Chapter 6. But how about that Chapter 7? We know darn well the Everlasting King and the Wasp King are waiting for us, but first up is the Deadlander ambush. And thanks to hardest mode and the increased defense that the Deadlander beta has, we can't KO it in one hit. No, a Royal Decree boosted hard charged Ice Rain does 24 damage, just shy of KOing the Deadlander beta. So if you could not already tell, we're taking a lot of damage and very quickly. It looks scary, but I looked for a way out. So I got a good old bird's eye view of the situation, and Kabu saw exactly what we had to do, where he used Understrike to KO the Deadlander beta, as well as set up for the Alpha to get killed by Maggie. Now it's just the Gamma, which really isn't very threatening. This thing in reality is just taunt bait, so as long as I play smart, we can't really lose anymore. Though that was no excuse to slack off. Before, in a previous fight against just one Deadlander Gamma, I did almost lose a fight because I got hit by the spores, and I only managed to survive because I super blocked everything. But the Gamma had its time in the spotlight. Its time is up, our time is now, and we're able to win shouting a hearty KO! Now for that pesky Wasp King. This fight is already really long, but I know the fight that comes after the Wasp King. And that fight on hardest mode has the boss restore literally all of its HP every time a new phase starts. So even though we have a lot of Queen's Dinners, we don't want to use too many in this phase, and then risk it being impossible in the actual fight where it matters. That being said, the Wasp King did a lot to encourage the use of Queen's Dinners, using AoE Pyro Spirals and spitting out lots and lots of fireballs. Now I don't know about you, but I'm not a Yoshi, and I don't think that fireballs are all that yummy either. But that's why we have good old Leaf dropping plenty of Ice Rain on the Wasp King. But Hoax is not no more. No, he was reborn to the Everlasting King. And this fight reassured me that the way I was playing this entire game was actually the best course of action possible. Notice yourself just how much damage Leaf is able to do, and then immediately how much of that HP is healed off. That HP draining flower is a massive problem for us. But at the same time, I don't want Hoax to go back into the sky, because that just means there's a chance of artifacts being summoned. And that right there is no good. This fight was otherwise by the books the same as the Wasp King fight, just with possibly less frozen drills. Even down to the damage I was doing, because even though the Wasp King is not weak to ice but the Everlasting King is, the Everlasting King also has 2 defense while the Wasp King has only 1. It's just that in this fight, the Elk, because, you know, the Everlasting King is just ELK, so, you know, Elk, can make this fight longer because of how much HP he's able to steal from me. But maybe I shouldn't complain. The Everlasting King can only stay on the ground for 2 turns before being forced to fly into the sky after all. And if I really needed to, Kabu can just force the Everlasting King back up into the sky, so there's an option for me. I just did it because it was in my best interest not to do that. Even though seeing the tablet really would not put much of a damper on things. The long and short of it though is that Queen's Dinners are fantastic healing items. It's funny, this item heals only 15 HP max, and our max HP is at like 29 and 31. Just goes to show how effective being able to heal every bug for 15 HP really is in a game with numbers this small. Oh, and get this, to add insult to injury, Princess got the KO here too. How many is that, like 10? This girl is on fire. So what's left to talk about aside from Team Mackie and Team Slacker? I mean, I could end the video right now, but let's be honest, if you're still watching the video, you care to see what happens with the final 2 bosses, so let's go with that. The first thing I did was try a dry run against Team Slacker. Stratos is an offensive juggernaut as always, of course he's terrifying, but the real worry here was Delilah's bazooka. Hardest and hard hits really magnify just how much damage we're taking from that thing. And the damage we can take is just immense. So maybe we aren't winning that fight just quite yet. It doesn't help either that Ice Rain is utterly pitiful here, so we may have to come back with Kabu being my main attacker instead. Though this fight was done without the extra Iron Seed and Super Pepper from Mackie's quest. And speaking of Mackie, let's try fighting Team Mackie right now. So Team Mackie was a fight where I used a lot of Frost Bowling surprisingly. When dealing with this many different targets, being able to hit everybody for a lot of damage is overall preferable. Don't get me wrong, this is still probably the last move I'd ever think to use offensively, but it's just that in this challenge, at least in the post-game, I find this skill to be actually useful. I guess take what you can get, because beyond here, you ain't getting anything from me. Otherwise, I make sure to use plenty of understrikes. Because Team Mackie can have as much as 5 defense, maybe even 6 if Mackie's defense gets increased at all by Yin, and ignoring all of that is very valuable. After losing once to this trio, I did end up KOing Maki and Kina, but that wasn't quite good enough for me. I'm not really interested in Error Blame, to be honest. Huh. That worked. I'm gonna see if I can actually get anything to happen there. Well, that didn't work. She probably looking to run away, but I'm gonna try anyway. Just see if I can. Will we get to? I don't even know, but we'll see. Oh my god, it's still working. This is so mean. This would be so freaking mean. God dang it, Princess is actually doing something. I should have had Princess use her turn to, like, switch back to her pretty ribbon. I didn't think this through all the way. It might even matter. Charge with murder. No, 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 no. I would never. They knocked her out too. Yin can eat it. I am such a bully, I swear to God. But Team Slacker was just not happening. I tried this fight multiple times at my current rank, and I could have went up to the maximum rank and get some extra MP, because at rank 27, you are given 3 more MP to use some more medals. But by now, I just did not really care enough. I did come close to winning, but this unfortunately is not a horseshoe, so coming close doesn't really amount to much of anything. There were multiple times we would KO Delilah, but Stratos can revive her with a magic seed. And they have multiple magic seeds. I don't know exactly how many they have, but I do know that there's a limit because I was able to beat this fight in my Pebble Toss only challenge. But here, where I have to rely on my items to stay alive, and I only have 15 item slots at max, believe it or not, I ended up using all of my Queen Zinners trying to stay alive, and I just could not do it. Heck, to rub some salt on the wounds, they have Queen Zinners, and they use them against me when it already looked like I was not winning this anyway. We tried so hard, and got so far. In the end, it doesn't even matter. Well, there's only one thing to do now. Anyone know any good bear chiropractors?